Cool.
All right, we're back again, episode 20. I was a little bit, we were with Aaron Simpson at Freedom House. I was a little bit overly optimistic today. We're gonna talk about the Jefferson Neighborhood, and I wanted to do it outside, beginning of April. Weather wasn't really too good today. We didn't want the camera to get ruined, so good thing you had a church right down the street. So here we are.
Yeah, it's always good to have one of those nearby.
Yeah, good to have a roof. Didn't want my guys' camera to get ruined. So here we are, episode 20. I knew you when we was little kids. I didn't really know you that well, but I knew your brother. I went to elementary school with your brother, Brandon, and I knew you were his older brother, but I don't even know if I ever even talked to you when we were kids, but I knew who you were. And I don't think I've ever seen you in person since, maybe, but a few weeks ago at the breakfast, community breakfast, I was speaking at it, and you won Volunteer of the Year for 17 Strong.
Yeah, the Kathy Klink Neighborhood Leadership Award.
There you go.
So.
Better than my term, Volunteer of the Year. But it was for your volunteerism.
Yeah.
In your neighborhood. We're in the Jefferson neighborhood. And I was asking, when we was walking over here, was it always called Jefferson? Because I've lived in East Hamilton my whole life. I never heard that till recently. And I thought maybe I was missing out. But you're saying maybe it's a little bit newer name, but I kind of like it.
Yeah. So when 17 Strong, I guess, began the 17 Strong initiative that we see as it is now, this neighborhood, its name was Fourth Ward.
Yeah.
And along with the old ward system. And so that's not the most inviting name in the world. And so it got named after Jefferson Elementary, which was the elementary school I went to. And so I think it's just such a fitting name, and the culture and just heart of that school, I think, transfers so well to just the culture and heart of this community as a whole. So it makes awesome sense.
Yeah, I like the name. I was just making sure I hadn't been missing something my whole life. So
No, that's a new thing.
Rebrand. I like it. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the neighborhood. You lived here most of your whole life. Tell us, what are some of the positives of this neighborhood? And I know it's got some challenges too that we can talk about.
Yeah, so growing up, this was a very industrial neighborhood. You had a lot more industry. You had a lot more steel mills, factories, kind of things where like Mosler Safe, those kind of things. So you had people who had lived here because they were living close to their work. So you had this really blue collar, hardworking community. And so as industry and those things started leaving and that industry started shutting down, people started leaving, and then people started, like landlords and things, started buying up the homes. And that really changed the culture of the community. It went from more of a place where people were living with permanence to more of a place of transience, and not so much of that involvement and investment that it had in kind of like the 70s and 80s and things like that. So with that and the height of some of like economic challenges and things, the neighborhood took a hard turn towards just violence, crime, addiction. And so over those few years, 20 years or so there's the diversity of the neighborhood changed. It was a primarily African-American neighborhood with some white. So now it was almost a third African-American, Hispanic, and white. In fact, I believe in the 2000s, Cincinnati Enquirer did a story on the ethnic diversity of Jefferson Elementary, of just how unique that was. And so this community is made up of multi-ethnicity, multi-socioeconomic circumstances. We got people and families that are doing really well, and we got people that are struggling with homelessness and addiction. And so we're a diverse community of people having just one story together, even though it looks very different from maybe house to house and street to street.
Yeah, and it's not so different than a lot of neighborhoods in Hamilton. There's a lot of similar neighborhoods. But I think some of the beautiful things I like about this neighborhood and some of the other neighborhoods we could talk about is, they still have businesses there in the neighborhood, and that's how my grandma lived in Lindenwold. I spent a lot of time over there, and just having a little corner store, I loved having that. And there's a lot of people who grew up in the suburbs. That's bizarre to them. They have to get in their car to drive to everything. And I felt like growing up in neighborhoods like this, I knew a lot more people than maybe my wife, who lived in a more suburban neighborhood where you might only know neighbors on either side. I'm sure you knew half this neighborhood, or you felt like you did when you were a kid.
Oh, absolutely.
Good or bad.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was so awesome that we knew our neighbors. And if you think about it, this neighborhood has that throwback culture of where we haven't yet traded the front porch for the back deck here. We know one another, we hang out outside where people are out here. As a pastor of a church in this community, there's a lot of challenges, but talking to one another outside isn't one of them. We can literally walk the neighborhood at any point and people will be outside, people will be in their yards, people will be just in the community, and having those kind of engagements isn't as odd as it is in some other segments of society. So.
Yeah, and I didn't live in this neighborhood, but I liked living in a neighborhood like that, and it does come with its own challenges. But Hamilton and this neighborhood is not the only one that fell on hard times for a while.
Yeah.
In the 70s, 80s, my grandpa came, the only reason I'm in Hamilton, he came from Kentucky, and he worked at Mosler Safe that you already talked about. And that's a common story in our city. And we did fall on hard times for a while, but me and you were roughly the same age. I think I'm maybe a couple of years behind you. I would have never thought Hamilton is booming as much as it is now when I was a kid. So things are turning around. How do we make sure that spreads out into some of the neighborhoods that we grew up in?
I think that's a good point there. First of all, it's just asking that question. We can't just assume that just because Hamilton itself is thriving and doing much better, and I agree, I would have never get the Hamilton I'm raising my daughters in is so much different than the Hamilton I grew up in, and I am incredibly thankful to our city leaders, things like that, for that. I think it's like asking those questions and knowing that the neighborhoods, especially the lower income neighborhoods, are not just going to get healthier just because. We have to be intentional, we have to be engaging. We just have to know that not as every community is different, has unique challenges and culture, the answer for what's gonna help the East End may be different for Jefferson versus Riverview. And so just being mindful of the community and the challenges. And also like you said, I think just the heart of this community is shown in that there are businesses here, people that are investing in the area and supporting them, getting behind them and things like that, I think is so big, so.
I know you weren't always winning awards for your volunteerism. What made you want to give back your career and your life to helping the neighborhood you grew up in?
Yeah, well, as a follower of Christ, as a Christian, I believe God's called me to lay down my life for His glory and to love Him and my neighbor with all my heart. And so, because being a pastor in this community, what we didn't want to do is just come here, visit, sing some songs, have a sermon, and then just go back home. But we wanted to engage this community. We wanted to live life with our neighbors. We wanted to reach out and be a part of just the life of what's going on here. And so not wanting to just come here and say some things, but to really live that out in the context of this community, so.
And how's it going?
It's going well, it's going well. It's not easy. It's very challenging. There's a lot of high demand. There's a lot of expectations that are people put on you that, to be honest, you can't obtain. And so you can't knock out homelessness just overnight or even maybe over a course of many nights or years. But the point is not to so much come here as with a savior complex of being like, oh, we're here now, homelessness and poverty and crime is gonna be gone. It's like,
sure.
No, we're here to love a people, to be a part of that people, to live life with them, whatever that looks like. And just so for the good or the bad, we don't wanna see that as a transactional thing, but just to dwell and do life with the community in Jefferson, so.
And I'm glad you said a lot of, I don't know what word you said, expectations are put upon you by other people, and maybe I'm sure you put expectations on yourself. And we talked off the record, I guess, or before the cameras were rolling a few days ago. You said, as a pastor and as a community leader, you're talking to people all the time, you're public speaking, all those things, but I thought it was important to point out, you told me that that's not your nature, you're an introverted person. And when you're out talking to people all day, it takes a toll on you. It's not easy. Yeah,
absolutely. And also, being a pastor, being a leader in your community, it's not like the guy who makes widgets at the factory or the guy who does insurance in the cubicle. There comes a time at the end of the day where you can kind of clock out, leave that. But you're never not a part of your community, and you're never not a leader for your community, or you're never not a pastor that people see. And so you don't just clock that out and leave and go somewhere and kind of separate from that. So those demands and challenges don't keep Monday through Friday 9 to 5 schedules. And there's that tension of wanting to lay my life down as much as possible, pour myself out for the glory of God and the good of my community, while also wrestling with that tension of, man, it gets exhausting and it's hard. And there's people I've seen them do really well and grow, and then they relapse once and pass away. I've numerous times here in Jefferson have seen people who have OD'd and just dumped in the street. I've seen people be brought out of their houses on stretchers after dying, and that takes a toll on you. But at the end of the day, you got to get up, you got to trust God, and you got to love your community still. And so we don't do that as the saviors, but we do that as a community of people who are trusting in the Savior to hopefully be a light into a dark place. So.
And I feel you in that. I mean, as someone, I've worked in factories and made widgets, and that there's some negatives to that, and hard. That's hard in its different way. It's boring, and you don't get a lot of maybe upside. I work the night shift, but now as an attorney, I'm not a pastor, but I might clock out when I go home, but my wife can tell you that my phone dings and I keep a lot and not helping them in the way you're helping them, but the problems they're coming with, they're not 9 to 5, and they need help, and sometimes I see negative things as well. I try to help someone, I think I've got them through something, and then they can go backwards, and that is hard, and it does wear you down. How do you, or what do you do, or do you even do a good job taking care of yourself to make sure you're still there? That's one thing that I know a lot of attorneys specifically struggle with, is we don't take care of ourselves, and you can't really give out as much, and it's a struggle. Do you do well with that, you think?
I think I've done better than I have in the past. I have, in the past, I was like a very yes person, like opportunity to do something or to be a part of something. I was like just off the bat, yes, I want to do that, because I just want to do as much as I can, especially with the opportunity to be able to do what I do full time. Like, I'm thankful to even be alive, let alone being a pastor full time. So really wanting to make the most of that. So especially in the beginning, I didn't know my limits, and didn't know, especially not knowing exactly what it would look like going from full time in like a more secular job to what I'm doing now. So, but yeah, a lot of, just having to put the phone in the other room, and just like, okay, right now I'm hanging out with my daughters, hanging out with my wife. Right now I'm in the scriptures, I'm doing a Bible study with some people, and just being present there. And just knowing that, like, I don't have to be the savior at Jefferson, because Jefferson always has one that's a lot better at it than me. And so I get to point people to the hope of God, not try to be that hope for them. So at times there is wrestling with that. There's a feeling of guilt at times that we may feel, or if somebody says, like, I'll run into somebody and the first thing they may say is like, instead of like, hey, Pastor Aaron, how you doing? They're like, oh, I tried to call you yesterday, you didn't answer. It's like, I was in the middle, I didn't want to drop my kids, so I didn't, so, and just having to know that, like, and just having a long-term vision too, that like, this isn't a sprint, this is a marathon. And so yes, having those days where it's just like, apart from it, that's so huge. So.
Yeah, a lot of similarities, I think. I mean, I've gotten plenty of 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning phone calls, and there's nothing I can do to help you at 2 in the morning. I mean, the court's not open, and sometimes it may be able to talk to you, but people do want access to you all the time. I think part of it's just technology. Older lawyers tell me it wasn't that bad. I bet maybe older pastors will tell you it wasn't the same when they didn't have cell phones. So now with the technology is great, but it does give access to you all the time, and you do have to learn to say no, and at least I've struggled with that, and it is hard.
And because of that greater access, now there's greater expectation. Since you are accessible, you should be accessible. And so that happens in we have such a commercial, like, consumer-driven culture that everything's supposed to be ready right when including us, including people. So that's a big part of what we do. So
so taking care of ourselves, something a lot of people struggle with, I think, in different types of jobs, but it's important. What are some of the practical things you're doing in the neighborhood to make it better? I know you do some things for you were telling me, like a cleanliness, like giving out products and stuff that people are almost in need.
So we have a hygiene pantry that's here anytime we gather on Sunday, Tuesday. We have a recovery group on Thursday. We have men's and women's groups. We have a hygiene pantry that's available for people to get any kind of like toiletry or those kind of needs. Also in the past, from about 2020 till here recently, and we'll probably be starting this again soon, one of the things that really motivated us was not being redundant. There are so many places that you can get free pizza and free meals and free clothes. And if we were gonna knock out homelessness one hot and ready at a time, we would have done it by now. So I'm like, what can we do instead of just set up the kind of the mercy ministries, the kind of just handing out things? So we're like, if all these things are being redundant, what isn't happening? So we looked at birth certificates and IDs. We kept hearing about social workers and case managers and organizations being like really restricted from how much they could help people because of their not having access or the funds to the basic documents they needed. And some people may say, oh, this person's homeless, why don't they get a job? Well, they can't just get a job. They don't have an ID, a birth certificate, they don't have new clothes, any of those kind of things. So we said, okay, we're gonna look into trying to provide this. So from late 2020 to here just a few months ago, we had bought about 1,300 to 1,400 IDs for people, birth certificates for people. We've partnered with numerous different rehabs, agencies, homeless shelters, the courts, schools, all these things. Because our model is kind of like, instead of recreating the wheel or doing our own thing, how can we support those who are already doing the things? So we want to serve the poor, and we want to serve those who are serving the poor, and be a light of Christ in that way. So.
Yeah, and that's not redundant. And people will be surprised, but I can speak to it personally. Before I was an attorney, I worked up at the DMV, and I gave driving tests to people, and I worked there for 6 years, right across Route 4, or by the old marsh.
Yeah.
And people will be surprised how many, people 20, 30, 40, 50 years old that don't have an ID, and it's a struggle to get ID. They either they don't have the right paperwork. I don't even always know if it is the money. Sometimes they just don't know where their birth certificate is, or they can't get it right up to Social Security office up down the highway to get it. So it is a big problem. And 1,400, I mean, that's a lot of people. I mean, in a town of 65,000, if you help 14 people get an ID, it's pretty, I mean, you can't do anything without that. So that's a start, Yeah. And it's not like, you're not going to get someone a job on Wall Street tomorrow if they're homeless. But if you get them an ID, maybe they can get a place to stay. You're going to need that for anything.
They can then get into rehab, get housing, get all those things.
Baby steps.
Yeah. So that's that start. But you can't get a job. You can't get anything without an ID. So
how can someone, out in Hamilton that wants to get back, and maybe they want to get involved with that, or they want to help, or maybe they're not even from Hamilton, just from the surrounding area, they want to help with something like that. How could they get involved with something? Getting people IDs, or how can they help your mission in general?
I would first start off with getting involved with the agencies and churches that are planted and rooted in those communities. One thing we see here is that, what I mentioned a second ago, was like the Mercy Ministries, kind of parachurch groups that come to these neighborhoods, and then they're just giving out the pizzas, giving out the stuff, but they're not really investing in the community. Giving to those agencies actually hurts this community because they have a vested interest in this community staying poor. If Jefferson gets better, all of a sudden they don't have this income stream of raising money by saying they're knocking out this and they're healing that. So I would say first, look at the churches and the agencies, the organizations that are rooted and planted in any given community that you're wanting to serve. Second, reach out to those communities and see organizations, nonprofits, and ask what they need help in. They want to hear from you. Nobody is gonna, like, if you call the Boys and Girls Club, you call Surf City, you call Living Waters or something like that, New Life Mission over in Riverview, they're not gonna say, oh man, it's another person wanting to help us. They want to hear from you. There are churches like ours, Freedom House, and there's others in this area that are really doing this, that are really wanting to love our community and come alongside the least, the last, and the lost. Not every church is a mega church with like smoke machines and lasers. Yeah. There's a church of this community, in this community, and for this community. And so there's a statistic from the Reiner Institute. They do a lot of statistics and things like that relevant to the church. 50% of Christians, confessing Christians in America, go to megachurches. 50%. Megachurches are 2% of the churches. So you have 50% of professing Christians going to 2% of the churches. So then you have 98% of the churches having 50% of the Christians. So therefore, how many do you think are landing in a church in a neighborhood like Jefferson? So being involved in the communities that are actually placed and rooted and planted in these communities is so big. So I would definitely encourage people to start there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people with good intentions, but if you don't understand the neighborhood, I mean, you may cause harm, or you may not do as much good as you'd want. So I think it's a good point, whether it's in churches or something else in general.
Yeah.
Just got to have local knowledge and connections.
Yeah. Good intention with bad execution can be like yay, A for effort, but
Yeah.
But yeah, so.
That's a good answer. I think that's something people can learn from for sure. If I had talked to you 20 years ago and said, Aaron, you're I'm going to be doing a podcast with you, and we're going to be talking about how you won a citywide award for your volunteerism, what would you have thought?
That's insane. That's insane, because I'd have probably been super high then, whenever that was. So yeah. 20 years ago. So yeah, I was not always the person I am now. So.
And I wasn't either. People in my family can know that. I mean, you can, a lot can be done in 20 years for sure. A lot can be done in 20 months or even 20 days sometimes. But you made that jump in the second half of your life from maybe not being someone you were super proud of being to where you are today. If you can jump that much more of a wild dream to something insane from here forward 20 years, what do you see for yourself in your neighborhood?
I want to see in 20 years, some people say to me, like knowing you today, I can't picture you being who you were 20 years ago when I was, involved in drugs, gangs, all that, right in this neighborhood. I would love for people to say that Jefferson 20 years ago, 20 years from now, the same thing. I can't imagine Jefferson like it was, because it's gotten so much healthier. Families are so much stronger. The infrastructure is so much better. The community involvement is so much more robust. That to say that, like, man, Jefferson used to be like that, man, and we can get there. It's not gonna get there overnight, but one day at a time, one event at a time, one relationship at a time, one conversation at a time like this, and we can get there. So
I definitely think it's possible. I mean, Hamilton 20 years ago, I wouldn't have thought where we are now is insane too. So I don't know why we can't make our neighborhoods. Jefferson Neighborhood, and there's other neighborhoods, similar in Hamilton. And we definitely, I think we got the ball rolling. How we can keep it spread out to some of the small neighborhoods is going to be a challenge, but like an opportunity too. I think I like to always stay positive. Like I thought we were going to shoot this video outside.
Yeah. And even just over the last like 5 or 6 years, crime has gone down, ODs have gone down. When we have the Jefferson Alliance meetings at the park, Officer Hefferman, who's from the homelessness outreach team of HPD, he goes through those numbers, and the numbers of arrests, ODs, deaths, shootings, those kind of things have all been down the last few years. And so the cool thing is, like, we're in the middle of it. We're not hopefully going to start a revitalization in the transformation of a culture. We're in the midst of it. And so it's like, it's so obtainable.
And that's an important thing, because it's not gonna flip a switch like a day. Your life probably didn't change like that either. No one's does.
No.
So it's a progress. So I think it's okay to be in the middle of it. It's okay to be happy that we're in the middle of it, and like see it, know it's not gonna be fixed tomorrow, and it might not ever be perfect. Nothing's gonna be, but kind of be present where we are and keep pushing. That's all we can do.
Enjoying this upswing, enjoying this, like, as things are moving forward. And it's an awesome thing to be a part of. Like, I've seen this neighborhood be relatively strong, to being a part of its downfall, to now being a part of its, like, revitalization. I mean, I'm thankful for that. It's an incredible thing. So.
I'm thankful to be part of it. I just live over there in Dayton Lane, not too far. I drive through here all the time, always have. So I really appreciate you sitting down and talking to me. I appreciate what you're doing in our town and your neighborhood. Is there anything you'd like to add for anyone that's listening?
Absolutely. So we in the Jefferson neighborhood, something we started a few years ago, is called the Jefferson Cup Soccer Clinic. And that's going to be in May, the 15th through 17th over at the park. Basically, the park we got in 2018, when the Fearmans and Matandi, when they donated that 17 strong Jefferson Alliance Parks Conservancy, the city of Hamilton did awesome work with making that into a park with some awesome, we got some picnic tables now, some playground equipment, we got playground equipment, we got an awesome mural on the fence there. And so we had like no trees, no like anything. So I'm like, well, it's kind of a flat field. What do you do with a field? Like, play soccer. The thing was, I didn't know anything about soccer. I didn't know anybody who did, but I knew that soccer unifies people like few other things can. And so we were at a Jefferson Alliance meeting. I was like, here's this idea. Does anybody know anyone who knows anything about soccer? So Tony Harris from the Hamilton Fire Department, he knew a guy named Steve Thomas, who was at that point on Baden's girls soccer team, one of their coaches. And so he's got connected. So for this will be the 4th year that we facilitate just a free soccer clinic where we eat food. We'll be eating some Garcia's tacos. We're gonna be teaching soccer, passing out t-shirts. It's gonna be an awesome time for the community. Princeton Pike West with Pastor Josh Colon, they're gonna be there on Friday night. We're gonna be raffling off like a bunch of bikes for all the kids that have came. The Boys and Girls Club on East Avenue is a huge part of being involved in that. So we definitely would encourage people to come out for that. And also, if they're looking for a church to come to, man, we'd love to see anybody who wants to just see what's happening here to come check out Freedom House on Sunday.
And you're on, what, 13th? Is this Edison?
No, this is 12th.
12th, 12th, 13th. All right, so 12th Street.
Yeah, so 12th Street, like right by the corner of 12th and Hensley. So.
Hensley, all right. And the park is East Avenue and Hensley.
Yep.
All right, right by next to the Boys and Girls Club.
Yes, absolutely.
Pastor Aaron, thanks for sitting down with me. Glad to, I don't know that I've known who you were since we was kids, I think, but I talked to your brother a lot when we were kids. I don't know if I ever talked to you, but glad we got to today, and we'll hopefully be talking. That won't be 40 years before we talk.
Absolutely. Anything you need, I'm always here for.
All right, man, I appreciate it.
You as well.
Not too bad.
Nah.
That was a good one, man. Fun. Glad we stayed dry.
Yeah. Instead of having to like stop, start again and stuff like that.